teach about user side of monetization, crafting value, driving in-game economies. And for that we will have from a game designer from Wargaming. Please join me welcoming Aleksandar Markovic.
Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the presentation. So today, instead of talking about the kind of like the classical ways of monetization, which is basically classifying everybody as a dolphin, minnow, or a whale, and then scaling the battle pass, I thought I'd talk about the user values inside of it. So what does make a user want to spend their time and money in your game or in your product? And then how do items within the game and how do economies actually become valuable to those users? Before that, just quickly about me. So I studied digital and game design. I worked as a freelance designer for a while, doing video editing, logos, narrative writing, anything that was available at the time. After my game design studies, I opened up a small studio with some of my colleagues. We worked on a 2D hack and slasher for PC. We sadly didn't get it published, but still that was maybe the best learning experience I had in my life. After that, I moved to Nordius to work on Top 11. I was a monetization game designer for about 2 years and a live ops game designer for about a year and a half. During this time, I started mentoring other game designers inside the company through the Serbian Games Association and overall in the industry, and that helped me move to Wargaming in Vilnius, where I'm now working on the World of Tanks. However, more important than that, for the biggest part of the past 30-something years, I've been gaming as much as I possibly can, playing all different genres, single players, multiplayers, basically anything I can get my hands on. With, as you can see this list, a bit of special attention to MMOs. So Elder Scrolls Online, Dungeons & Dragons Online, Guild Wars, all of them, and then with most attention paid, of course, to World of Warcraft. It was inside the World of Warcraft that I started farming and selling gold around Burning Crusade as my main source of income. What was the kind of like just a gold farming operation quickly grew into an overall monetization scheme where I was basically trying to understand what value users assign to certain parts in the game, and then how can I provide that value to them. So you could say that long before I opened spreadsheets and started making monetization features, I was catering to the whales as a user. And during this time is when I kind of started thinking about this monetization model in my head. So basically first trying to understand what it is that makes the game popular and what it is that is going to make the game available for me to make money off of it, and then which items in the game are going to be valuable for the users and why. So if you look at, for example, World of Warcraft, that was the amount of gold you had on the account, the end game gear you had on your characters, and then special achievements and feats of strength that you would have, compared to, for example, Elder Scrolls Online, in which it was all about how many characters you had leveled up, because the leveling was quite different and the game was new, so it was harder to users, so it was valued more, and also different skins that you could craft within your professions. So by understanding this, I could understand which things in the game I need to have in order to sell that account and make money and advance to either a new account or a new game. And that kind of brings us to the point of this presentation, where I'm going to explore a bit what it is that makes things valuable to a user inside of a game, why, and then what kind of you should think about when you're designing a game or when you're talking to your game designers in terms of prepping your product for something that can be successfully monetized. So, you can see this? Okay. In this case, I have a cool example for you. So this is called Delar, a sword from World of Warcraft. It's a legendary sword that you get from a quest, and the quest item to get it, you get from a dungeon. So the important thing about this is the quest item that you get is not bound to the player who picks it up, so it can be sold at the auction house. So while playing, because I was playing on multiple servers at the same time, I saw that this item goes for 12,000 gold on a PvP server and 65,000 gold on a roleplay server. So if you think about why do players buy a sword on a PvP server, they buy it to smash other players with it or to smash content with it. So you kind of take a look at the stats of the sword, you compare it to other swords that can be crafted or got from other types of content, and you kind of determine the value. But on a roleplay server, you're buying the sword because it's tied to World of Warcraft lore. So as a role player, you're buying kind of this license to insert yourself into the world and have the background of World of Warcraft lore be the thing that's building your character. So the roleplay players, this item was significantly more valuable to them. So in the same game, the same item on two different servers cost 5 times more. And this is kind of where I started thinking about these things and what can actually be sold to which types of a player. And this can be seen throughout the industry as well. So if we, for example, take a look at Dota and Counter-Strike, you could kind of buy skins in this game from the get-go. So it was $15 to $20 to buy a skin for your hero or for a gun, and that was about it. But then Valve started investing super heavily into esports. And what happened is that they created these spectacles out of their game, like the Dota majors and things. And suddenly items that would drop on these spectacles that would be tied to either one tournament or that would be tied to a rising esports player started rising in value because the prestige of these items and owning them started increasing. So now you have these skins being sold for 10, 15, 50 or 100,000 euros and more, basically making them what kind of NFTs are supposed to be. It's the same thing that if you look at single-player games as well. So when CD Projekt Red released Blood and Wine, which is one of the best DLCs ever created, they kind of set this shift in the industry where players were now thinking, okay, so this is the amount of content I'm supposed to get for 30 euros. So suddenly, if you wanted to sell them 2 pistols and a knife for 30 euros, they just didn't feel as comparable and as valuable anymore. And in regards to this, we can see that digital items are kind of growing in value over time. So here on the left side, you can see Michael Jordan's shoes from the 1998 finals. It was a game against the Jazz. I think he dropped 45 points. He autographed the shoes, and the shoes were sold for $2.2 million. And on the right hand, we can see the evolution of items over time. So starting with RuneScape party hats, which went for a couple of $1,000s. Warclaves of Azeroth in World of Warcraft, around 10,000 euros. Then we can see the Immortal Pink Courier sold for $200,000 as part of a collection a few years ago. We also know that some skins from Counter-Strike are worth around $200,000 to $300,000. And a bit of an extreme example, but Planet Calypso from Entropia Universe sold for $6 million. There is a lot of also instances from this game sold for several $100,000. So we know that now these items are kind of starting to reach the tier of other legendary items in our lifetime that are not directly related to games. So yeah, what you want to think about first when you are trying to figure out the monetization for your game is first figure out the ecosystem that the game exists in. So in mobile games, because they are so much more dynamic, for a very long time, we used to monetize time invested into the game. So you know how it goes. You would get the loot box, and the loot box would open in 25 years if you're a free-to-play player, but if you paid, the loot box would open instantly. This can't easily be translated to PC games, and because they function differently than mobile games, and if you try to do this, there is always a significant negative sentiment that goes along with them if you're trying to put them in a game inside the ecosystem that they don't belong in. So what happens is that users are the ones that will kind of gravitate towards being monetized in terms of certain parts of your content. And what you want to decide before you start monetizing your game is trying to identify content streams that you are going to monetize them in. You don't want to have a single one. You want to know how many players will PvE, how many players will PvP, how many social players you have, how many players will be engaged with subsystems such as crafting or anything like that. And then after that, you can actually try to understand and start to understand what kind of community is going to be playing your game. Now, you can use any of many different classifications that happen online, and you can call them casuals, you can call them lovers, you can call them killers, but what kind of goes behind that is that each part of these players is going to be susceptible to a certain part of monetization. You can, of course, sell the core progression of the game, as many games do, but if you diversify this and if you create different streams of content, then you're going to be able to scale your game much better and to scale your monetization with it as well. And then you can create something for everyone. So, if, for example, if you have a game that has PvE and PvP, you might want to consider placing some PvP items to drop inside your PvE content, because when these PvE pure players get it, they're going to be more inclined to at least try PvP in your game, because they will feel that the bar for entry is much lower than without having these items. And if they try it, some of them will stay, and then you will have a portion of your community that can now be monetized through two different content streams. And if you don't, then you're going to probably run into overvaluing one piece of your content, which is most usually the core progression of the game. So if a user used to have a sword and hit for 5 damage and he would upgrade to 7, that was a really cool feeling for them and they could actually feel it. But a couple of years later, now they're hitting for 1 million damage, and when they go to 1.2 million, something is lost there. It just doesn't function as well as it did in the beginning. And we can see this happening throughout many different games, throughout many different contents as well. So usually the most classical case is rarity. So you start your game with bronze, silver and gold coins, and then you release a battle pass, it has red coins, and then you make a step box gacha and it has mechanic coins, and sooner or later you're presenting your player with this type of mathematical puzzle where they can't even understand which parts of the game they want to go through and how to get to the point where they're doing something effective. The same goes for vanity as well. So in Dota you have 50 different Legion Commander sets, and I probably have all of them as a player, and when you release the 51st one, am I as excited about it as before? Or do I already feel like I kind of got something already that I wanted from your skins and from your sets, that now I'm oversaturated in terms of what you've been selling to me, because you've been selling me only one piece of content, usually only vanity. So what you want is, you want to try to create a healthy system design and a healthy economy inside of your game, and you don't want to make it super balanced. You don't want to create a closed loop system where players simply exist and whatever they do, they can't break out of it in any way. Because fully balanced systems, if they're monetized, over-monetized, as many games are these days, they tend to break apart, and you're never going to find time in production to go back and then to rescale and rebalance your entire economy and develop things that would support the system. But if you create a slightly broken system, then over-monetizing and breaking it a bit more actually doesn't make it unplayable. It makes it actually balanceable with certain patches and tweaks, and your users won't feel like that part of the game just doesn't function anymore. And of course, you kind of want to be ready for the inevitable things that happen in production. So if you put on a scale the balance and the health of game design, and then on the other side of the scale you put the need of the product to make money, that other side is going to win 100% of the time. So these things are going to happen, and what you can do is you can actually try to anticipate within your broken design certain items that are going to be oversold and over-monetized, and then if your system is built to support it, you're going to lose a lot less players and generate a lot less negative sentiment when you actually do so, because you will do so inevitably, especially if you're successful. And last but not least, one advice that I can give is actually play the games of your competition. And I don't mean just play them in terms of watch a YouTube video and play a couple of hours. I mean try to play them as a user who actually cares and wants to be better at a game. Because when you release a game, you're not going to get 1 million users who never played anything inside that genre. You're going to get 1 million users who played everything else, and they come with certain predefined pain points that they have and they will expect to see in your game. And if they don't see it in your game, then you can get an actual chance to have them stick around and to have them willing to spend money and spend time playing your game. And of course, the hardest things try to make it fun. And that's it. Thank you all for listening. And if you have any questions, I can try to. Well, if you have no questions, then that's it. Thank you very much.